Алло, здравствуйте, у меня вызов пропущенный от вас. Я безработный. Э, я даже не знаю, там. Я только приходил, мне сказали 20 числа это показаться. Сейчас что-то вот позвонил. 12 часов.
А вы в регистрацию не пришли?
Я к мужчине приходил из 7-го кабинета.
Перезвонят, наверное, я не могу сказать даже, кто звонит.
12 часов.
Сейчас никого нет.
А, понятно. 12 часов, в общем, был звонок. Мне, когда мне звонить или что, я не знаю, что, по какому поводу звонок-то был, тоже не понимаю, так что...
Может, признали? Вас не признали еще или признали?
Не знаю, и даже не в курсе, ничего-то не говорили. Может, и признали, может, и нет.
Сейчас, секунду. Скажите фамилию.
Губаев.
Еще раз, по буквам.
Губаев.
Евгений Маратович.
Ну да.
Запомните, ваш специалист Плотникова Жанна Михайловна.
Понял,
Вы
хорошо.
признаны безработным.
Ага. И звонок, в общем, что, мне перезванивать или я жду тогда, да, звонка или что? Да, это что? В смысле, ждать?
Сейчас присоединяюсь, прошу. Вообще-то она еще с вами не работала. Вас еще только назначили. 27 ноября вы к кому ходили? А вот вас признали, вы не приходили, да?
Нет,
Вообще регистрация 21 декабря, вы знаете об этом, да? Вот, и вам, наверное, дату хотели поменять сейчас. Перезвоните, пожалуйста, попозже, я минут через 5.
хорошо.
Она еще занята, что скажите.
Ага.
Или ей перезвоните в конце. Сейчас. Вообще-то у нас точно 9.
Без 10...
Перезвоните через 5 минут.
Хорошо. Сам не идешь на работу, да? Сам не идешь. даже уж не знаю вообще, чем. Свет, ты что, ты правда говоришь, что все так хотят жить, как я, как ты? Нет, это, если даже это так, как ты говоришь, если даже, да, ну это бред, как ты так можешь, да, да. Вот еще раз это не понимаю. У меня нет детей, нет работы, нет этого, нет этого, понимаешь, как бы в жизни я никто, как бы у меня столько там, да, я тебя понимаю. Ну да, да, да. А какая разница, ну да, понял. Не смиряться, вот это мой вариант. Вообще, да. Наоборот, он так не думает, он так и думал о себе тогда. Да. То есть нечему. Что ты, как бы ты смеешься, что ли, думаешь? Жизнь не дался. Женская тупая жизнь какая-то, да, может быть такая, наверное. Не зауважали. Ей самой не особо нужно. Не нужно, если. Наверное. Я уже говорил 100 раз, не дорога мне. Ну, у меня хватит. Да. Что ты видишь, что тебе я знаю, как говорю, жена. Ага, здравствуйте, это, это 5 минут назад вы сказали перезвонить, можно будет. Плотниковый, по-моему, да?
Ну, в общем-то, все нормально. Я просто думала, что дату менять нужно. Так и придете свою дату регистрации.
У меня там, ага, у меня 20 числа, простите, написано, да, 20-го?
21, да, у вас?
Если что, вы 21 говорите, а у меня 20 написано. Ну, прийти 20-го, наверное, да? В смысле, или что?
Сейчас, подождите. Губаев Евгений Маратович, да?
Ну да, типа этого.
Почему вы говорите прийти 20-го? 21 декабря.
Не знаю. Ну хорошо, ладно, я понял.
Ага, 15-20.
Ладно, понял. То есть это просто блажь. То есть я блажью занимаюсь 20 лет. Как это? 20 лет хвост. Я понимаю. И что ты предлагаешь? Это все была шутка, я придумал заниматься гитарой, там, музыкой и так далее. Это все было. То есть ты о чем говоришь-то вообще тогда? Ну нет, о чем не да. Нет, они себя так нет. Ну нет, они так кто-то думает о себе. Тебя. Нет. Я все понимаю, что я вот такой вот, да. Я понял, да. И, ну, ты меня понимаешь уже теперь, начинаешь. Понимаешь. Я понял. Нахера тебе жить, если ты такое говно, понимаешь? То есть таким и остался и пошел. Да, ну, понял. Не знаю, просто, ну да, понял. Где вот? Я такой великий теоретик. Где мне никому нету, никому дела до меня нету, понимаешь? Там или кто там? Ты кто там? Певец? Кто там еще там? Кто там? То есть как бы, да. Не знаю, это все, либо это не так работает, либо ты, ну, короче, неважно. Ну, короче, да, забудь. Это даже не смешно, понимаешь? Не понимаю. Ну ладно, скажи, я не прав, да, я женщина-чиновник. Вот ради чего жить? Чем ты живешь? Как да, нет. Ну, наверное, может быть и так. Может, я просто слабый из-за этого так, да. Ну, это ты уже говорил просто. Да. Ну да. Ну, нет, или взять тариф за 400 рублей. Кто может повезло. Я сегодня, ну, вообще как бы да. А чё, почему нет? Ну да. Ну, тоже вариант. Это все ерунда, понимаешь? Это все не имеет значения. Ну, нет, он не понял. Ну да. Кому нужен этот быт, понимаешь? Да. Каких еще друзей? Ты о чем говоришь? Да. Друзья, они появляются, это когда ты, да. И с ними не надо не бухать, ничего, да. То есть на дистанции, говорит, сейчас время тратить впустую, это, да, наверное, как люди говорят. Как бы серьезно, видимо, это, наверное, надо кричать. Работать надо. У меня не было намерения быть прям сам. А почему нет, понимаешь? Да. Еще раз повтори, что ли? Да. Ну, да. Нет, наоборот. Нет. А. Вы можете платить, пока, если хотите. У меня большие были проблемы, понимаешь, наоборот. Ладно, большие глаза. Почему нет? Печень болит, да? Почему нет? Бог рвет, понимаешь? Я не хочу, я не потому, что мне надо идти дальше в болезнь. Я не про это я тебе говорю. Да, я тебя понял. То есть это, как тебе скажешь, да. Ну да. Нет, надо делать то, что ты решил уже правильно делать. Свое решение, не потому что тебя кто-то там. Но вообще как бы типа вот сразу можно определиться, что тебе надо. Это будет в области человеческой деятельности, типа того. Причем без разницы какой, правильно понял меня, понимаешь? Понимаю, там просто я понял, что. Да. Медицина замечательно, понимаешь, супер. Да. Ну да, то есть медработник это не шарлатан, понимаешь, не демон, тебе просто так не дадут, если ты понимает он тебя. Да. Ты можешь этим заниматься как бы на досуге. Если ты будешь это делать как бы вместе, тогда с тебя будут вот спрашивать, да, тебе скажут либо, что да, понимаю, да. Тогда тебе надо будет это как-то, понимаешь, доказывать, там разные есть варианты, понимаешь? Вот я понял, да. Ну да, типа того. Ну, пожалуйста, авторские методики не приветствуются в авторских методах только, да. Типа того, как скажешь, что. Ну да. Ладно, да, понял. Вот это должно деньги приносить результаты долгосрочные. То есть чтобы, да, люди к тебе приходили, возвращались, были благодарны, потому что реально результаты, да. Ну да. А что еще всю жизнь будешь делать? Ну, профессия, ну, освоишь ты там эти навыки, человек так много там осваиваешь, что ли, я не помню. Всего 5 лет нужно, наверное, да. Я понимаю, понял. Нормально. Ну да, что-то нет. Нет, что ли, ты болтается. Я был очень плохим учителем. Мне не бизнес нужен, понимаешь? Нет, бизнес мне нужен в долгосрочный период. Что такое бизнес? Когда ты играешь музыку, люди тебе платят деньги за это. Переходим, например, да. Как тебе надо, да? Ну да. Ну мне плевать, что ты. Ну и что еще скажешь? Ну, я понял, что. Не, реально, мне как бы даже на бизнес по барабану. Только вот время отнимает это реально так. Да. Тут надо начать работать, что-то наработать. Да, тем более. Ну как ты будешь бизнес, если ты человек. Ну, можно, наверное, и так, но это не лучший вариант. Да. Обычно в таких случаях как-то перемен. Ну, я понял, да. Не, в конечном счете, он тебя понял, ну да. Ну, я не знаю, перешибленный головой. гибкость психологическая. Я слабак просто, да. Да, в обратную сторону не работает. Ну, если вы поняли. То есть быть бабой. Чтобы не секс был. Гибкость это женская черта. Ты как думаешь, мужская или женская черта? Я понял. Ну, потому что семья не создается, а мужик берет и ебет бабу. И себе ее потом заключает. Но он так не думает, он так и говорил просто себе. Да. Это просто правда, которую как бы стыдно говорить. Но если ты будешь говорить ее вслух, если ты не будешь говорить ее вслух, тогда люди даже думают, если будешь говорить, мы будем думать, тогда да. Ну а как? Ну это все сказки. Покладистая должна быть. Ты так не думаешь? Он на себе опять говорил. Да. 50/50. 50% покладистый муж, 50% покладистая жена. 50% половина яйца у тебя, половина у меня. Это на тебе так говорит. Ну нет, она это понимает. Женщина не хочет соглашаться с тем, что она не мужчина. Как и мужик не хочет соглашаться. Как объяснить? Ну вот это и было оно. Ну и чё? Ну вот так и что теперь? Как это слишком просто? У меня план такой, ну значит система. Ну, вот это есть, и я, ну типа это, ну а что ты от меня хочешь? Ну я понял, всем похер, ты ничего не хочешь. Денег заработать. Мы неправильно жили, понимаешь? Мы не идеальный мам. И отец тоже не идеальный был, да? Даже если бы они не развелись, то, ну, меня не касается, я просто говорю. Там, вот, чисто вот тупо. Идеальный мужчина не может развестись с неидеальной женой, да? Ну, как бы, да, понял себя. Наверное, не понял. Вот я и говорил, то есть, я, может, не прав, тут поправка просто будет. Нет, ну, как бы, я тебе так вот говорю, я думаю, что ты, может, ну, ты понял же, да. Ну, только вот ты как думал. Ну, себя ты посмотри, говорит, наоборот. Да, наоборот. Нет, наоборот. Типа это, да? Никакая Нигера, говорит, не страшна, потом, вот я понял. Ну да, они же вроде как не, ну, меня не касается. Наверное, нет, просто раз, ну да, наоборот, я понял. Раз залетело, два залетело, третий там, это далее, да. А женщин все лечится очень просто, понимаешь. Смысл, ну да, наоборот. Смыслом жизни беременна, понимаешь. Наоборот, ну нет. Не исходная похоть женщины. Если Ева, это не Ева, это уже там другое какая-то мифология какая-то лежит, да. Женский демон уже, ненасытная похоть. То есть, да, ни поэзия, ничего не вылечит, ни артистизм, ничего, это все только беременности всю жизнь. Только здоровый животик и любовь. И даже ты порабощение от этих вот они там вылупляются и начинают на тебя отходить, и ты хочешь много перебить, а чтобы они не короче, твои были родные, всегда, видишь, добрая девушка, да? Конечно, наоборот. И так далее. Я к примеру тебе говорю, да, то есть это вот женская черта, да, все знают, женская черта, да. Понимаю, а себе иногда говорю, чтобы никто не ушел от тебя, так, потому что, ну, ты меня понял. Нет, все догадались. Нет, ты злая, ты. Есть мнение? Наверное. Безактивно. Смотри, вот если оно не активно, ты вот так вот понимаешь себе. Что нет, на то, что наоборот. Ну нет, она себе так думает. Ну, наверное, да. Может такого не использовать. Мама, то есть все лечится просто очень простой физиологией. Ну, просто беременная. Потом снова здоровая, понимаешь. Потом снова. Нет, уже потом не снова. Не касается, то есть ну как бы так вот всю жизнь. Лучше ничего не придумаешь. Надо, да. Видишь, они так не хотят, потому что они что-то хотят. Ну не за мой счет. Они даже не понимают, что это, то есть, ну, поняла это. Что вот именно так, понимаешь? Ну, у тебя поняла, что больше не надо.
У жизни короткая программа. Родился, женился, детей родил, на работу ходил. К 40 годам абсолютное большинство.
Tonight, the busiest day yet for holiday travel, crowded airports, and the new warning as Americans return home.
We might see a surge superimposed upon that surge.
Plus the new restrictions affecting millions. Joe Biden's emergency trip to the doctor after twisting his ankle, and some history made today announcing an all-female team to run White House communications. Reversing course, the biggest school system in the country switches back to in-person learning for elementary schools, but not older students. The science behind the change. Race for a vaccine, the key vote at the CDC this week. Who gets the vaccine first? The debate over whether nursing home residents should be in the first wave. Cyber Monday starts just hours from now. Where to find the best deals online, and the new way companies plan to ship their products to you. And why some police officers are taking a break from busting criminals to bust some moves. It's all about making connections.
This is NBC Nightly News with Kate Snow.
Good evening on the busiest travel day we've seen in 9 months ever since the pandemic took hold. And while top officials understood the impulse to see family, they spent today issuing grave public warnings about what could happen next, urging anyone who did travel to stay away from others or risk spreading the virus further and straining the ability of hospitals to find enough staff to care for the sick. We'll get to vaccine news and much more, but let's begin with Blaine Alexander at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport.
Tonight, millions of Americans are taking to the skies and the streets, headed home after Thanksgiving travel, something health officials pleaded with the public. Experts say because of that travel, we are likely headed into the worst phase of the pandemic.
What we expect, unfortunately, as we go for the next couple of weeks into December, that we might see a surge superimposed upon that surge that we're already in.
Over the past week, TSA has processed more than 7 million passengers, less than half of what we saw last year, but by far the busiest stretch since the start of the pandemic.
I encourage it. Everybody get out, enjoy their time. Keep your mask on and be respectful of others. You'll be fine.
And while we have weathered holiday surges before, with the U.S. now topping 13 million cases, experts fear this will be much worse.
We're entering this post-Thanksgiving surge with 3, 4, and 10 times as much disease across the country. And so that's what worries us the most.
All as Americans continue to disregard health warnings. In Denver, the mayor who urged his residents to skip holiday travel,
please stay home,
is now apologizing after taking a flight to see his family.
It was hypocritical. It was a mistake that I deeply regret.
And in New York, officials shut down this club packed with nearly 400 people. All of it dealing blow after blow to a healthcare system stretched to the limit.
If things don't turn around quickly, we're going to have a situation with capacity, not only of hospital capacity, but staff.
We're exhausting all efforts, doing everything we can, and just still cannot save everyone.
For virologist Dr. David O'Connor, seeing millions disregard health warnings is beyond frustrating.
It's sad and it's difficult to watch. And so I think that the next couple of months are going to be the darkest and bleakest that we've seen yet in this pandemic.
Blaine joins us now. Blaine, for people who were traveling, officials aren't just asking them to isolate, right?
That's right, Kate. In fact, some states are actually requiring it. Now, experts say if you are going home to elderly relatives, you should wear a mask and perhaps above all, get tested about 3 to 5 days after you return. Kate.
President-elect Joe Biden just wrapped up an emergency trip to the doctor. It comes as he makes history with another new round of appointments. Kelly O'Donnell has late details from the White House.
An unexpected detour for President-elect Joe Biden today. His motorcade took him to a Delaware doctor's office for an apparent ankle injury that happened Saturday. Aides refused to let journalists see Mr. Biden enter or leave, but told reporters President-elect Biden slipped while playing with his dog Major and twisted his ankle. Out of an abundance of caution, he will be examined this afternoon by an orthopedist. While Biden was being examined, the transition rolled out a big staff announcement. women to fill all the top 7 communications roles, including former Obama aide Jen Psaki, named White House press secretary, and deputy campaign manager Kate Bedingfield as communications director.
And I said this from day one, that these numbers were not going to change much at all.
Today, Wisconsin completed a recount of its 2 largest counties that confirmed Biden's win with a small boost, adding 87 votes. Another blow for the Trump campaign that paid the $3 million recount cost. President Trump returned from Camp David today, joined by 3 of his grandchildren, just after he lamented the flailing legal fight to overturn the election in a phone interview.
Well, the problem is it's hard to get into the Supreme Court.
Another hurdle, the president's understanding of how election litigation works. He told advisors he wanted to personally file one catch-all election lawsuit.
And they say, sir, you don't have standing. I say, I don't have standing. You mean as president of the United States, I don't have standing. What kind of a court system is this?
His anger and grievance turned on the Republican governor of Georgia, where Biden scored an upset. But Republicans still need unity to win 2 Senate runoff races.
This character in Georgia who's a disaster, and the governor's done nothing.
And Kelly's with us now. Kelly, we just got an update on the president-elect's injury.
We did. The doctor who has treated him says that the initial x-rays show a sprain of the right ankle with no obvious fracture. But the president-elect was also undergoing a CT scan for some additional imaging. The transition did not disclose the president-elect took this slip or fall on Saturday when it happened, going public only late today. Kate?
Kelly O'Donnell at the White House, thank you. This week promises to bring major news on the vaccine front. CDC advisors will vote on who should get a vaccine first and whether nursing home residents should be a part of that first group. Gabe Gutierrez has that.
With skyrocketing deaths and National Guard troops deployed to help, nursing homes have been at the center of the COVID crisis. Now they may be at the forefront of the solution.
We likely, almost certainly, are going to be vaccinating a portion of the individuals in the first priority before the end of December.
A major question, who should be in that first priority group? CDC advisors are meeting Tuesday to vote. Likely healthcare workers, but there's debate about residents of long-term care facilities.
When we move a new drug into the general population and we look at how it acts in the real world, it's so critical that we do so before we move into a frail population. So that is why, even though long-term care residents are at greatest risk for COVID, there is some consideration that perhaps the vaccine should be delayed for them.
Experts have a range of concerns, including possible side effects of the vaccine and that many nursing home residents can't travel to a hospital or outpatient clinic. Major pharmacy chains such as Walgreens are preparing to bring the vaccines to nursing homes, either by setting up a central location within the facilities or by going room to room. According to an NBC News analysis of federal data earlier this month, more than 1,300 nursing homes across the U.S. reported having 3 or more COVID cases.
Do you think that residents of long-term care facilities should be in that first priority group?
Barring no other choice, yes, they should.
Vivian Zayas' mother died from COVID in a nursing home on New York's Long Island. She started an advocacy group, Voices for Seniors.
I know it's a dangerous virus, but the reality is that we cannot continue a treatment of isolation.
About 40% of the nation's COVID deaths have been in nursing homes. Tonight, there are mounting questions about how to get the vaccine to them safely. Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News, New York.
And later in the broadcast, we'll look at how states are planning to distribute the vaccine. Up next, the blockbuster Cyber Monday deal's just hours away and the date you need to memorize to get gifts delivered in time for Christmas. Okay, who's been browsing the online sales already this weekend? Consumers shattered records on Black Friday, and Cyber Monday, which starts just hours from now, is set to be the biggest online shopping day ever. Tonight, Jolene Kent with the tricks for getting deep discounts and free shipping.
The pandemic is ushering in a huge new wave of online shopping. This Cyber Monday is expected to be the biggest online sales day in history, with shoppers shelling out up to $12.7 billion tomorrow. It comes after consumers spent a record $9 billion online on Black Friday, coming out to $6.3 million a minute. And the good news for those slow to click buy, Cyber Monday isn't just a one-day event. Stores are pushing deals for Cyber Week right now, like up to 40% off Ninja kitchen supplies at Target and Walmart, $50 off Bissell, Shark, and Dyson vacuums at Target, Amazon, and Walmart, and HP laptops slashed by 40% at Best Buy.
Moving forward into December, the categories that I will expect to be discounted will be the toy category.
Among the gifts hardest to find, gaming consoles like the new PS5. Retailers saying they'll continue to restock in the weeks ahead. But the X factor this year is shipping, with delays already plaguing the system.
For so many shoppers, free and or fast delivery is essential. It will make or break your order. That's why stores like Best Buy have turned part of their stores into mini fulfillment centers like this to get you your stuff as quickly as they can.
So experts recommend ordering online by December 11th to take advantage of free shipping that arrives in time for Christmas. After that, the price you pay for on-time delivery will rise.
Just run a simple web search, free shipping, and the name of the retailer and see what pops up, because sometimes you'll find that code.
And with the majority of shoppers preferring to shop online in this pandemic, the president of Shopify, an e-commerce platform for small and medium-sized businesses, say it may never be the same.
What we are seeing now is not an anomaly. It is the blueprint for the future of retail. And so the growth of e-commerce will continue long after we have a vaccine. There is no going back to a pre-COVID retail model.
This challenging season forever changing how we give and receive. Jolene Kent, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Still ahead, ramping up for COVID vaccines, the massive challenges ahead for the health department where you live, plus the new member joining the White House family. Health departments across the country are facing an unprecedented challenge when it comes to the new COVID vaccine, how to store, distribute, and track it all. Tonight, we begin a week-long series, Race for a Vaccine. Ann Thompson reports on how states are getting ready.
The final delivery of the long-awaited COVID vaccine will come down to local health departments.
The part at the distal end, namely getting into people's arms, is going to be more challenging than just a regular flu season. I think it'd be foolish to deny that.
Skilled at measles, flu, and other mass vaccination efforts, they've never had to do something like this.
Why does the COVID-19 vaccine present unique problems?
We all have to remember, we've never been in a position really where we have to vaccinate 330 million people. This is the most massive effort to date.
We talked to health officials across the country about the challenges ahead. In Houston, the Memorial Hermann Health System is doing practice drills.
We've done all of the preparation, we've created the plans, we've practiced relative to the distribution, at least in terms of doing exercises. So we think we're ready to go.
They're part of the pilot distribution program organized by Pfizer, maker of one of the vaccine candidates. That means preparing to track everyone who gets it, because Pfizer's vaccine requires 2 doses 21 days apart, and using its freezers to store the medicine at Antarctic-like temperatures. In rural Wisconsin, that's a challenge.
Does the typical rural hospital have the ability to keep a vaccine at 94 degrees below zero?
Absolutely not. Some have actually placed orders for such freezers, but it's not like they have guaranteed delivery.
Add to that overworked staffs treating COVID patients and no sign of $6 billion in federal funds needed to distribute the vaccines.
We can't do anything without cash. We're cash strapped right now. That's not going to change between now and when the vaccine comes out.
In rural and urban areas, the biggest problem may be trust. The most recent Gallup poll shows only 6 in 10 Americans would agree to be vaccinated.
People who get it early should be the heroes, the champions. We should know about them. You can build on that with the populations, especially, Black populations, Latinx populations that are really more hesitant.
So the nation can take the next step in ending the pandemic. Ann Thompson, NBC News.
Tonight, the world is remembering the man who made Darth Vader such an imposing villain. Dave Prowse was the actor behind the mask in the original Star Wars trilogy. While James Earl Jones, of course, provided the voice, Prowse used his 6'6" height to bring Darth Vader to life. Dave Prowse was 85 years old. And one more note from the White House tonight. If you're a cat person, this one's for you. NBC News has confirmed that the Bidens plan to add a first cat to their family. That would be the first feline in the White House since George W. Bush's cat named India. And before that, it was Bill Clinton's famous cat and a rescue named Major. When we come back, the police breaking out. There's good news tonight about creating connections and the creative way some police officers are reaching out to their communities. This is not typical police work. This will not lead to an... What's the whole point of it?
The whole point is to build connection.
Some police officers ride horses. Awesome.
Connection between police and their community at a time when that bond is in serious need of repair.
We have to be able to teach not only the police officers, but the community, how do we start engaging positively and connect positively on a daily basis?
It's all part of a program called Hey Blue, founded by former NYPD officer John Verdi, now living in Florida.
I will be.
Before COVID, officers would read to classrooms in person. Now it's virtual story times.
It's time to dance around, my friends!
And online dance parties. Mainly targeting Verdi's current hometown of Melbourne, Florida, but viewed across the country.
I love what it does for the kids, what it does for the officers.
Jeremy Bohannon is an officer on the Austin, Texas police force.
Community policing, relational policing, empathetic policing is probably one of the most important things that we possibly could be doing right now.
Officer Bohannon.
Police officers was mainly authoritative and very intimidating.
But despite their reservations, they started participating in story times and saw a different side of police.
I know now that I have a link, that I have an open door.
Verdi was in New York, spending days digging through rubble, when a third grader he never met gave him a card.
And that card used words like heroes and support and love. We believe in you. I'm sorry. From that day on, I had always started to find the connection between myself and kids in the community.
A goal he's still working to fulfill 20 years later. Anyone can join in on their Facebook live stream, by the way. It is Hey Blue. And I'd like to invite you to check out my digital series, The Drink, about how people make it to the top of their field. My latest conversation is with writer and producer Lena Waithe. Her own life story won her an Emmy. It's at NBCnews.com/The Drink or on the NBC Nightly News podcast feed. Lester Holt will be back with you tomorrow. I'm Kate Snow. For all of us here at NBC News, stay safe and have a great night.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.
Парфюмерный супермаркет «Золотое яблоко». Скидки до 70%. Это черная пятница. Несмываемый крем-спрей All in Professional. 340 рублей. Подробности на сайте goldapple.ru.
All of support shown by the community today.
He's received, so much, and it's amazing how, it's like I tell him, all these people are doing this for you.
And little Raiden is grateful for everyone who came by today, too. To those who stopped by to show him love, he says, "Thank you."
Our thanks to Morgan Burrell for that report. And we're thinking of everyone who has lost those this year due to coronavirus. More than 260,000 people now.
Yeah, it's going to be a really tough holiday season as is, but with the community coming together, hopefully they'll see it through.
Yeah.
Right now, a young artist who continues to impress with his skills. 14-year-old Tyler Gordon of California followed up a portrait of Vice President-elect Kamala Harris with one of President-elect Joe Biden. He said he painted Mr. Biden because he also has a stutter. Just last week, Harris called Tyler and told him his art is a gift to so many people, and it's the gift that keeps on giving. He could do the entire cabinet now after this. Amazing.
Talented kid. I'm sure he will be commissioned to do official paintings sometime very soon. Thanks for starting your week with us. I'm Philip Mena.
And I'm Francis Rivera. Your news continues right here on NBC and our NBC stations.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
Good morning, I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Breaking overnight, edging closer, U.S. drug maker Moderna filing for emergency FDA authorization for its coronavirus vaccine. The crucial meeting happening this week that could decide when you could get your shot as cases across America skyrocket to record highs. Reversing course, New York City's mayor ordering all elementary schools to shift back to in-person learning. How parents and children in the nation's largest public school system are reacting. While President-elect Biden makes a historic announcement about his administration. Ready, set, click. Cyber Monday poised to be the biggest online shopping day in history. Shipping companies preparing for a surge in holiday deliveries. What you need to know before you log on. And prepping the plaza, our Rockefeller Center Christmas tree just days away from making its national debut. What this year's annual holiday tradition will look like in the era of COVID. And Joe, I can confirm after seeing it in person on Friday with the scaffolding off it, it looks like it kind of got its pet back.
Yeah, I think so. It just needed to stretch out a little bit.
Maybe have some more branches. So we're not really sure, but it looks a lot better than it did when it went viral.
People will be thrilled. Yeah, honestly. Charlie Brown tree or beautiful full tree, whatever.
No matter what, exactly. Yeah. It's a Christmas tree and it's a tradition that we get to stick with this year. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But we begin with promising news breaking overnight in the search for a coronavirus vaccine.
This morning, Moderna became the second drug company to submit its vaccine for emergency FDA authorization. It could potentially pave a new pathway for COVID relief with nearly 95% effectiveness. As for Pfizer's vaccine, the first doses have now been flown to the U.S. The vaccine is not approved just yet, but also shows to be 95% effective. The U.S. is consistently reporting a record increase in daily infections, topping 13 million just this past weekend. Top health officials are now issuing a dire warning, with Dr. Anthony Fauci saying we might see a surge superimposed on the surge we're already in following the Thanksgiving holiday. We have a team of doctors and reporters covering the pandemic from across the country to around the world. Let's begin with NBC News correspondent Ron Allen, who is in New York City. So, Ron, Mayor Bill de Blasio says schools will reopen starting next Monday. What more can you tell us about that plan?
Well, it's a phased-in plan, Joe, that begins with pre-K and grades up to 5. Then middle schools and high schools, however, are going to remain closed. Also, schools for kids with disabilities will reopen. This begins on the 7th of December and the 10th of December. So it's a very phased-in, and it's somewhat modest when you think of the fact that there are 1.1 million kids in school, and only about 350,000 or so have opted for some kind of in-person learning. Now, the mayor reversed this after the positivity rate in the city went above 3%, which was a magic number. But the rate in the schools, the positive test rate, is less than 1%. So the schools have turned out to be a remarkably safe environment for kids. And a lot of parents were up in arms that there were still restaurants, bars, other businesses open, but the schools were closed. And there's all sort of data out that suggests that closed schools, remote schools, are not good for kids' education, certainly, nor for their social and emotional well-being. So a reverse here. It's going to take a week or so, and then it remains to be seen whether the rest of the schools will open, whether the rest of the students will have the opportunity to go to school, or if in fact they will still be on the sidelines until next September. Joe?
And Ron, schools closed almost 2 weeks ago because the city was reporting a 3% positivity rate. Now, some schools are reopening while cases are still increasing. So are schools doing anything differently now to try to keep students safe in the classroom?
Well, the big thing they're doing is, or they're going to be doing, is testing 20% of each school's population at least once a week. Now, that's a lot of testing, but New York City has the capability to do it. And that was one of the requirements that the union of teachers and principals and administrators agreed to. Parents, of course, like that. And the parents have to sign a consent form. So the short answer to the question is it's going to be massive testing to make sure that the numbers stay below very low. Again, it was 3%, but that number was conceived many months ago, and they've done it with testing, with social distancing in classrooms. I think that will help keep the schools open here.
All right, Ron Allen in New York City. Thank you, Ron.
Now, a different situation in Kentucky where all students are switching to remote learning as most of that state is seeing a spike in coronavirus cases. NBC News Now correspondent Mara Barrett joins us now from a snowy Lexington, Kentucky. Mara, thanks for being up early and out in the winter weather for us. Now, we'll get to schools in just a moment, but first, tell us about the current COVID situation there and what restrictions are in place to try to curb the spread.
Good morning, Savannah. Yeah, it might be hard to tell because of the snow in the early morning hour, but this testing site is actually set up in what is usually a horse racing course here in Lexington. The governor needed to put some additional surge testing sites in place in Kentucky because the positivity rate here is nearly 9%. And of the 120 counties in Kentucky, all but 5 are in this critical red zone when it comes to those positivity cases. And that's why the governor put these new restrictions into place last week. Basically, for the next couple of weeks through mid-December, all schools will be remote learning. There's no indoor dining. Retails and salons are limited to 50%, and private events at theaters, community spaces like that are limited to 25 people. Gyms are also operating at reduced capacity. And so the governor says that these restrictions are integral in terms of tackling the surge, the second wave that we're seeing here in Kentucky, Savannah.
Now, Mara, an appeals court just ruled that all schools in Kentucky, including religious ones, will stay closed. But that decision's not going over well with some parents. Tell us more about that.
Right. The courts were actually very busy over the Thanksgiving holiday here because following the governor's executive order, the attorney general, some religious schools here in the state sued the governor and asked for the private religious schools to be in person. These private religious parents that I spoke to actually saying that they believe that their faith-based learning, community service-based learning can only be done in person. And they basically argued that the separation of church and state, the protections by the First Amendment weren't being held into play here. One court said that they were right and said the private schools could reopen today. The governor then appealed that, and now schools are actually still banned by that executive order. The governor releasing this statement where he said, while we all want to get our kids back to in-person instruction, the United States Courts of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit recognize that doing so now would endanger the health and lives of Kentucky children, educators, and families. And so this is something that he's holding firm on, but the consensus across the board with a lot of parents, whether they're in public school or private school, is that they want the choice of whether families can send their kids back to school. I want you to take a listen to a few parents I spoke to yesterday to get their perspectives.
I have no doubt our kids would be safe in an environment that they can learn, and yeah, I think there is some hypocrisy on what's open and what's not around not just the city, but I think the state on what continues to be open.
I'm also a mental health professional, so I get the privilege of working with a lot of the students that come in, and I cannot tell you how many people are coming in just negatively impacted by quarantine and isolation, anxiety, OCD, suicide. I mean, we are seeing tremendous things on the rise with these.
So these parents echoing what you heard from Ron up in New York, frustration over other businesses able to be open but not schools, and these real data-driven effects of the social and emotional learning impacts on these children, guys.
All right, Mara, thanks so much.
England's lockdown ends this week, but that does not mean people living there are getting the all clear. NBC News correspondent Kelly Kobiea joins us now from London. So, Kelly, the lockdown ends on Wednesday, but what happens when it does come to an end?
Well, the country is going into a series of tiers, is what they're calling it. It's a 3-tier system, essentially, and it puts different regions of the country under different restrictions, ranging from much less severe to quite severe, almost like what we experienced under the lockdown. So, for example, in London, which will be under Tier 2, which is sort of the medium range tier, restaurants and bars will be open, but only if they serve what are called substantial substantial meals. So you'll be able to go in and have a meal with someone from your own household, but only have a meal. You won't be able to have drinks, for example. Other things are opening. Stores are opening, retail shops, gyms, all of these sorts of things. All of these businesses, though, are operating at a reduced capacity. They all have social distancing inside. They limit the number of people who can come in at any one time. Masks are used in all stores in England. So you are going to see these restrictions come into place as of Wednesday. And then in the more in the places of the country where they are still seeing a very high prevalence of infection, like in the Northeast and Northwest, those areas will actually be under Tier 3, which is essentially like being under lockdown. Only retail stores will be open, restaurants and pubs won't be open except for takeaway and delivery service. So what they're saying is, look, we've seen some progress under the lockdown over the past month, but it's not enough to release all of these measures. We need to still keep some measures in place in order to keep the infection rates under control, Joe.
Now, Kelly, a new study from Imperial College London found that daily coronavirus cases fell by nearly a third during the lockdown. What else did researchers learn?
Yeah, a pretty surprising number, actually. They looked at infection rates from late October versus mid-November. And remember, we've been under lockdown, which means only leaving your house for essential reasons, for food, medical reasons, that sort of thing, working from home if you can. And nearly all businesses, retail, gyms, etc., have been closed. So what they found is that infection rates dropped massively in certain areas in particular, in the Northeast and Northwest, again, where the infection rates were rising exponentially before we went into lockdown. They came down by a half, and in other areas coming down by a third. So they did see that this lockdown measure worked. However, again, the health secretary saying it didn't completely eliminate the virus. We still need some restrictions in place.
All right, Kelly Gubaev in London. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Let's now bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar to talk about that promising vaccine news that broke overnight. Good morning, Dr. Azar. Good to see you. Thanks for being with us. Now, Moderna is the second drug company to apply for emergency FDA authorization. And I got to say, it feels good when we get to start the show with some good vaccine news. But how hopeful are you that we could see an approved vaccine before the end of the year?
Very hopeful, Savannah. Here are the bullets. This vaccine was found to be 94% efficacious overall, but 100% efficacy in preventing severe disease. The results were consistent across age, gender, race, ethnicity. It doesn't require cold chain distribution, and it was very, very well tolerated with very minor, short-lived side effects like injection site reaction, a little bit of achiness. Very, very promising.
Now, Dr. Azar, top health officials are warning of a surge on top of a surge because of Thanksgiving. We've seen this after a lot of holidays. What's your advice for people who did decide to travel over Thanksgiving or who plan to travel later this holiday season?
Well, Savannah, right now there is actually no strict or formal recommendation from CDC to quarantine if you traveled for Thanksgiving, unless you definitely had an exposure to somebody who was positive for COVID-19. But that doesn't mean that you should go back from where you came with any sort of lackadaisical attitude. We're recommending increased vigilance in terms of masks and social distancing, and also kind of lay low, meaning reduce unnecessary activity in the week that you come home, whether it's out, dining or bars or going to the gym, that kind of thing. And if you can get tested, you should, anywhere from 4 to 5 to 10 days after you return home.
Dr. Azar, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thanks, man.
Now to the transition of power in Washington. President-elect Joe Biden announced key picks for his administration, while President Trump is doubling down on his promise to fight election results in his first interview since election night. Our political correspondents have it all covered for you. Ali Vitale is in Wilmington, Delaware. Carol Lee is at the White House. So, Carol, let's start with this interview by President Trump. It was roughly 45 minutes long and focused largely on the president's unverified claims of widespread fraud. So give us the headlines here. Was there anything new?
Well, there was a lot of allegations of fraud and a lot of venting of frustrations, and some of it is what we've heard before, but a little bit of it had a new flavor. I mean, the president said that, for instance, that he wants to take this fight all the way to the Supreme Court, and vented at one point saying, you know, if the Supreme Court doesn't take the case, then what's the point of the Supreme Court? So that gives you a sense of how he thinks about the court, which is something that he said even during the election he thought would weigh in on the results of the election. So he talked about that. He vented frustrations from everyone, from the judges who've made decisions on his cases that he doesn't like, to the governor of Georgia, who's an ally of the president's and somebody that he endorsed. He now says that he's ashamed he endorsed the governor of Georgia. And look, guys, he said that after all this, after all the lawsuits and the certifications and all the evidence that shows that his claims are false, that he might not ever believe it. Take a listen.
Based on everything that it's not like you're going to change my mind. In other words, my mind will not change in 6 months. There was tremendous cheating here.
And that comes on heels of a number of setbacks legally for the president, but he's vowing to fight on.
Now, Allie, President-elect Joe Biden has made a historic administration announcement with his communications team. What more can you tell us about that?
What we learned last night, Joe, is that the top 7 communication roles in this White House, across the First Lady's office, the Vice President-elect office, and the President-elect's office, are going to be staffed by women. Two of the key roles that you're going to be hearing a lot about. Kate Bedingfield is the communications director at the White House, the top communications role. She's someone who viewers may have seen over the course of the campaign on cable news, on some of our platforms. She was a deputy communications manager. She was a deputy campaign manager, rather, as well as the communications director for the campaign, as well as Jen Psaki, who was a communications director in the Obama White House. She'll be filling out the press secretary role, so she'll be occupying the space at that podium. And what you see in this slate of 7 women is not just a diversity in terms of race, but also in terms of lived experience. What you're seeing is people from the progressive wings of the party all the way through Obama administration veterans, as well as the fact that many of these women are also mothers. It just sort of goes to show you that when they're talking about having an administration and a cabinet that looks like America, they're not just talking demographically, they're talking about lived experience and a diversity of lived experience.
Carol, let's talk about Arizona. It's expected to certify the state's election results this afternoon for Joe Biden, as the president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, confirms he's going to attend a hearing with Arizona lawmakers on the election. I'm guessing this is not any sort of judicial argument. What is going on here?
Well, it's similar to what we saw in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where the president's personal lawyer attended a hearing, quote in quotes, which was really a meeting in a hotel ballroom with Republican lawmakers from the state. And that's supposed to play out now in Arizona, also in a hotel ballroom. And they're calling it a, quote, fact-finding mission. So there's nothing official about this. Rudy Giuliani told our own Kristen Welker that he will attend. It's not clear if he'll do that in person or somehow virtually, but he's expected to make an appearance there. The big question is whether or not the president once again calls into this hearing. But as you noted, it comes, as he did in Gettysburg, but as you noted, it comes as their state is certifying the vote and everyone else is moving forward.
And Allie, really quickly, you've got news about President-elect Biden being treated for that minor injury, which he made news for last night. He's getting a new foot fashion accessory. What can you tell us about that?
You could call it that. We're told that the president-elect is going to be wearing a boot for several weeks now, because on Saturday, when he was playing with his dog, Major, he twisted his ankle. Yesterday evening, he spent some time at an orthopedist getting his ankle looked at. It turns out, after an extra scan, that it is several fractures, hairline fractures. That's going to cause him to be in a boot. And I think a lot of people, reporters alike on Twitter, sharing their experiences of having similar injuries to this. It can mean several weeks of being, a little limpy, sitting in a boot. So we'll be waiting to see if that's something that extends actually to the inauguration, because this is news we're just learning last night.
Right. Allie and Carol, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
The president's interview that we just mentioned focused largely on his unverified claims of election fraud. NBCNews.com political reporter Jane Tim is here to fact-check some of those claims. Jane, good morning. Let's start with what the president said about his election lawsuits. Listen to this.
I wanted to file one suit, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, against, and put everything into one simple suit. And they say, sir, you don't have standing. I say, I don't have standing. You mean as President of the United States, I don't have standing.
So as we've seen, the president's team has filed dozens of election lawsuits. There he was saying he wanted to do just one big one. Does he have standing as president, as he just said there he doesn't?
The president can bring a lawsuit, but he cannot continue to fight a lawsuit unless it has substance, unless there's something to it, there's some merit. And the courts have said that these allegations are pretty baseless. They lack evidence, they're speculative, and the courts have said there's a reason we don't allow baseless lawsuits because they gum up the works. Trump's been trying to stop the certification of results, and they've said, you know what, you got to have some reason for us to want to do that. So that's what they mean when they say that there's no standing. It really means there hasn't been a lot of evidence.
Now, the president did say that they do have evidence of voter fraud in Pennsylvania, but the judges won't allow them to present it. Listen to this, too.
Well, we're trying to put the evidence in, and the judges won't allow us to do it. We are trying, we have so much evidence.
Now, based on what we've seen from the lawsuits the Trump campaign has filed, is that true?
No, their evidence isn't there that the president says it is. And the courts have really come down hard on this, particularly in Pennsylvania, where they've sought enormous relief, like not certifying the results. Essentially, what the courts say is disenfranchising 7 million voters. One court said they restrained legal arguments without merit and speculative accusations. They appealed that. The next court said no merit. So the courts have really been harsh on this and said, you know what, you got to give it if you're going to make these claims.
All right, Jane, thanks so much for your reporting.
Thanks.
Another major story we're following is Cyber Monday, expected to be the biggest online sales day in history. According to preliminary data from Adobe Analytics, consumers spent about $9 billion on Black Friday. That increase in online sales has experts predicting a record-breaking Cyber Monday. Here's NBC News business and tech correspondent Jolene Kent.
The pandemic is ushering in a huge new wave of online shopping. This Cyber Monday is expected to be the biggest online sales day in history, with shoppers shelling out up to $12.7 billion. It comes after consumers spent a record $9 billion online on Black Friday, coming out to $6.3 million a minute. And the good news for those slow to click buy, Cyber Monday isn't just a one-day event. Stores are pushing deals for Cyber Week right now, like up to 40% off Ninja kitchen supplies at Target and Walmart, $50 off Bissell, Shark, and Dyson vacuums at Target, Amazon, and Walmart, and HP laptops slashed by 40% at Best Buy.
Moving forward into December, the categories that I will expect to be discounted will be the toy category.
Among the gifts hardest to find, gaming consoles like the new PS5. Retailers saying they'll continue to restock in the weeks ahead. But the X factor this year is shipping, with delays already plaguing the system.
For so many shoppers, free and/or fast delivery is essential. It will make or break your order. That's why stores like Best Buy have turned part of their stores into mini fulfillment centers like this to get you your stuff as quickly as they can.
So experts recommend ordering online by December 11th to take advantage of free shipping that arrives in time for Christmas. After that, the price you pay for on-time delivery will rise.
Just run a simple web search, free shipping, and the name of the retailer, and see what pops up, because sometimes you'll find that code.
And with the majority of shoppers preferring to shop online in this pandemic, the president of Shopify, an e-commerce platform for small and medium-sized businesses, say it may never be the same.
What we are seeing now is not an anomaly. It is the blueprint for the future of retail. And so the growth of e-commerce will continue long after we have a vaccine. There is no going back to a pre-COVID retail model.
This challenging season forever changing how we give and receive. Jolene Kent, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Let's look now at what's making news around the world this morning.
NBC's Sarah Harmon joins us. Hey, Sarah, good morning.
Hey,
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Good morning. Let's start in Iran, where the funeral procession began today for the Iranian nuclear scientist killed in an ambush-style military attack on Friday outside Tehran. Today, Iranian officials attended his funeral ceremony. They were sitting apart and wearing masks. Iran is vowing revenge for his killing and blaming Israel for the attack. Turning to racing, the French Formula One driver Romain Grosjean is one lucky man after surviving a horrific crash at the Bahrain Grand Prix. He suffered some injuries, including broken ribs. When you look at these pictures, guys, it is just incredible to think that he walked away from that crash site. And finally, these days, it feels like we are all watching The Crown, including apparently the British Culture Secretary, who has suggested that the show needs a disclaimer that it is in fact fiction. Secretary Oliver Dowden is expected to file a request with Netflix that each episode carry a fiction disclaimer. This comes after Clarence House, which operates the social media accounts for Prince Charles and Camilla, actually had to restrict the commenting because of an influx of trolling. Savannah, Joe?
Gotta say, this season of The Crown really seems to have stirred people up one way or another. You either loved it or you are concerned about what you think is not true in it.
But it's obviously fiction. I mean, it's
exactly.
like
it's a scripted show with actors,
It's not
right?
a documentary.
Yeah. All right, Sarah. Thanks so much.
Let's get a check now on your morning news now weather.
And Janessa Webb is with us today. Hey, Janessa. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Good to see you both. Man, today is going to be a high impact weather day across the Ohio Valley into the Northeast. We do have winter weather alerts for 22 million people, even for the Great Lakes, unfortunately. And you can see this storm system. It's moving pretty quickly north and east. It will make its way into New York City, Boston area by the noon hour. Now, we do have many elements with this storm system. To the west is going to be predominantly snow due to the cold air. Right now, we are forecasting a potential of 5 to 6 inches with isolated amounts across Northeast Ohio up to 10 inches. So this is going to be the first big snowfall of the season for that area. On the other side of the front, there's still very warm air that's filtering in, and that's why the severe weather threat will continue across the mid-Atlantic into the Northeast. So damaging wind gusts, also a risk of a few tornadoes this afternoon. Savannah and Joe, but the good news today is the end of hurricane season. I'm going to tell you more about that coming up.
Look forward to that, and that's good news to hear. Janessa, thank you so much.
Thanks, Janessa.
In Georgia, a second recount resumes today.
What the president is now saying about the Peach State's Republican governor in the wake of election unrest.
Хочешь, чтобы карта лояльности всегда была под рукой? Все, что тебе нужно – телефон. Зайди в приложение АЗС «Роснефть». Авторизуйся в личном кабинете, если у тебя уже есть карта лояльности. Если еще нет, выбери пункт «Виртуальная карта» и выпусти виртуальную карту в личном кабинете. Чтобы накопить или списать баллы, нужно показать кассиру QR-код. Семейная команда.
Буду писать по одной, чтобы они все такие, ого, так вот, вот на твоих глазах я сейчас буду писать. Как будто никто это...
Дней вместе. Не забудь рассказать друзьям.
Что-то работа не та, и семья не та, или жизнь не та. А может, я не тот? Вот вопрос. Почему до 30-35 лет качество нашей жизни постоянно растет, а потом вдруг начинает резко падать? Серьезно, что такого уходит из жизни и забирает с собой радость и ощущение драйва, и заставляет нас вздыхать, что лучшее в жизни уже позади? И можно ли это потерянное как-то вернуть? Вообще-то можно, еще как. Меня зовут Владимир Яковлев. Скорее всего, вы меня знаете по моим прежним проектам. Издательскому дому «Коммерсант», журналам «Деньги и власть», проекту «Возраст счастья» или моим видео «Яковлев по понедельникам». Сегодня я объявляю о моем специальном бесплатном мастер-классе, который называется «Продолжение следует». Чтобы зарегистрироваться, жмите кнопку «Подробнее». Это мастер-класс для тех, кому не хватает радости в жизни. Вам хватает? Если нет, регистрируйтесь, и рад буду с вами встретиться. До встречи.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
From our family to yours.
Don't you love the holidays?
Wishing you all the joys of the season. Happy holidays from Today.
I'll tell you what the American people's mandate is. Heal the nation. It's why he ran. That is why he won. How close to the breaking point is our hospital system? Has the president-elect spoken with Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell yet about this issue? If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.
The coronavirus exploding to staggering new records. Trump still offering no concession. Highly effective vaccine may be close at hand.
You're telling me a 3-year-old is not too young to experience depression.
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
Are people there concerned about what impact this could have on the election?
It's news made for your streaming world.
Today is getting you ready for a holiday like no other. From best shopping strategies.
Buy online, pick up in store. Yes, Pupus.
To celebrating safely at home. What you need to know. Every morning on Today.
For breaking news in our changing world, download the NBC News app.
I didn't know, was my child dead? Is my child passed out?
I just kept saying, please be okay, please be okay.
You rush your child to the hospital.
A woman came in, normal clothes. We get down the hallway, she closes the door. They were accusing me of child abuse.
And that's when the real nightmare begins.
Calm down.
No, it's my children. I can't calm down.
Do No Harm, a new podcast series from NBC News and Wondery. Episode 4 is available now. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
In the news this Monday morning, police in Grenada, Mississippi are investigating a mass shooting at a biker club. It happened early Sunday morning. At least 11 people were shot. The police chief says his officers found multiple firearms and stolen property inside the club. So far, police have not made any arrests. The New Orleans Saints and the New England Patriots are facing hefty fines from the NFL this morning, ordered to pay up for violating the league's COVID-19 protocols. Let's start with the Patriots, fined $350,000 after quarterback Cam Newton's COVID diagnosis led to a league delay, while the Saints were fined $500,000 for a maskless locker room celebration. And finally, do you remember that mysterious metallic monolith that seemingly appeared out of nowhere in the Utah desert? Well, it has disappeared. Utah's Bureau of Land Management said in a statement that the illegally installed structure was removed sometime Friday night. But here's the kicker. State officials say they didn't touch it. The county sheriff's office will continue the investigation into the disappearance of the structure. And sorry once again to those UFO conspiracy theorists out there, they say they don't believe aliens were involved.
Oh.
If they were, it would have been a bigger news story. Put that at the top of the show.
Yeah. Aliens confirmed.
Yes.
We'll break in with that.
All right. And that is what's in the news this morning.
Now to battleground Wisconsin, where President Trump's $3 million partial recount effort has backfired. The latest results now show that President-elect Biden's victory over Trump has in fact increased by 87 votes. Down south to Georgia, where the state's second recount is set to continue this morning after a temporary delay caused by a voting system server that crashed in Fulton County, where the Atlanta metro area is located. All the while, President Trump and other Republican interests have filed more than 40 lawsuits across the country in an effort to contest the election results. Though it's important to note, most of them have been denied, dismissed, settled, or withdrawn. And although no court nor state have found any instance of misconduct, President Trump continues to falsely allege widespread fraud in the general election. Here he is on Fox News' Sunday Morning Features over the weekend.
This is the greatest fraud in the history of our country from an electoral standpoint. And I guess you could build it up bigger than an electoral. What's bigger from a electoral standpoint? What's bigger than this? This is the essence of our country. This is the whole ball game, and they cheated.
A lot to unpack here, and our team of reporters are out in full force with the latest on the recounts and races from the Peach and Badger states. NBC News political reporter Vaughn Hilliard is in Atlanta, and NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster is in Milwaukee. Good morning to you both. Let's start with the latest in Georgia. Vaughn, that means you. I'd like to focus first on those runoff races. Now, we know President Trump is slated to stump for the state's sitting Republican Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue this Saturday. So will they be campaigning in-state during the week, or will they be on the Hill?
Yeah, this is a big week for Georgia politics. It's January 5th is the day of these special runoff elections. So we're a little bit more than a month away. But this week is the week that President Trump is going to be campaigning in the state. Essentially his first rally since Election Day last month. But also this upcoming Sunday is debate day among these four candidates. Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, the Republican senators here from Georgia that are vying to retain their seats, are actually headed back to Washington today, and that is because Congress is back in session. Republicans are going to be trying to pass some of these numerous federal judges here up on Capitol Hill, as well as negotiations continue over a spending plan, as well as some potential COVID relief efforts here. All the while here in the state, the Democrats, Raphael Warnock, as well as John Ossoff, are in the state, going to be on the campaign trail, essentially making these last 5 weeks of what they can, especially over the course of the next week. Voter registration ends here just a week from now. I was talking to a campaign aide just last night who told me that they see about 23,000 potential new voters who were not eligible at the beginning of November for this election, but who are eligible now, and they are working to get those voters registered before the December 14th early voting date begins.
These runoff races are going to be keeping the attention on Georgia long after this recount's over, which I'll ask you about in just a moment. But Shaq, I want to bring you into this conversation now. Wisconsin's recount is in the books, ending with a small boost for the president-elect, just 87 votes. What can we expect now from the Trump campaign? Will there be more legal challenges filed?
Yes, Savannah, we can expect things to move fairly quickly now that this recount has wrapped up. It officially wrapped up just yesterday once Dane County certified the results. Remember, this recount was happening in two of the most Democratic counties of the state, Milwaukee County, where we are now, and Dane County, and it pretty much confirmed the results that we saw shortly after the election. Well, today, the chair of the Wisconsin Elections Commission will certify the results. That will happen this afternoon on a video conference. And we can expect President Trump, as he suggested in a tweet this weekend, we can expect him to file a recount fairly quickly. He tweeted this weekend that the recount was not about checking the count, so to speak, but it was more about trying to find so-called illegal votes. There are several categories of votes that his team is contesting. One of those categories are any in-person early votes that happened just in these two Democratic counties. Meanwhile, the Biden campaign is saying that the Trump team is trying to disenfranchise hundreds of thousands of votes. They're saying that these are baseless attacks and that the recount confirmed that he won this state. But we'll see the Trump team either today or tomorrow file that lawsuit in court. Savannah?
Now, Vaughn, let's get to the Georgia recount. It's in the midst of its second general election recount. The first one was triggered by that new state law requiring an automatic audit, and this is the one that was requested by the Trump campaign. How are things shaping up there, and what has the president said specifically about the state's governor?
That's right, Savannah. The latest recount is slated to be over by tomorrow. That is a recount done by these voting machines, yet it is not expected to change anything because a hand audit has already been done here in the state, and it only changed the outcome by a few votes here. The big question is, what are President Trump's plans this upcoming week? He's coming to town on Saturday to campaign, But is his focus going to be on those two Republican senators who are trying to retain their Senate seats with literally the Senate majority on the line? Or is he going to use that opportunity here in Georgia to rail against the election system? And specifically, could he hurt the Republicans in the state by continuing to rail against the Republican Secretary of State and the Republican governor? Take a listen to part of his interview yesterday when he went on the attack against the Republican governor here.
Like this character in Georgia who's a disaster, and the governor's done nothing. He's done absolutely nothing. I'm ashamed that I endorsed him.
Не надо, потому что нормально, значит,
He says that he's ashamed that he endorsed Governor Kemp, who you'll recall narrowly beat Democrat Stacey Abrams in 2018. And that is because this Republican governor and Republican Secretary of State a week and a half ago certified the election results, put their name to the authenticity of these election results, which obviously has outraged this president. Again, there are 5 weeks left for the president's anger here with Georgia elected officials to be directly confronted with the reality that Republicans need to win these 2 U.S. Senate seats held by Kelly Loeffler as well as David Perdue in order to hold on to the Senate majority.
Now, before I let you both go, Shaq, I just want to ask you quickly about the coronavirus in Wisconsin. For the past couple of weeks, the state was showing signs of slowing the spread of COVID-19. But is there concern there that the holiday weekend will change that, as we've seen with holidays in the past?
Exactly, Savannah, and that's a concern that you hear from doctors and health experts, not only in the state of Wisconsin, but all across the country. When you look at Wisconsin specifically, you saw in the weeks before Thanksgiving, you saw that curve start to bend a little bit. The average number of new cases started to fall. There were fewer records being hit with that. The positivity rate, while it's still a dangerous 29%, it did begin to fall from its peak at about 36%. Well, now doctors, and we spoke to one last night, doctors are fearing that with the Thanksgiving holiday, that trend may be reversed. Listen here.
Shaq, unfortunately, I don't think we have that sound, but...
No worries, no worries. Well, the doctor was talking about the capacity and the situation in the hospital, saying that they are already at a dire situation, and they know that if people start to contract the virus, once they go back and test, and as the situation kind of gets worse and we get an assessment over what happened this Thanksgiving week, he fears that they may not be able to handle the influx of patients because they are already near or at capacity. Savannah?
Shaq, sorry about that. Thank you for paraphrasing that for us. And Vaughn and Shaq, thank you very much for being up early, out in the cold. And I'm digging the coordinated masks, guys. Good to see you. See you soon.
With several seats in Congress and more than $1 trillion of federal funding all at stake, the Supreme Court is set to hear oral arguments today on President Trump's plan to exclude undocumented immigrants from this year's census. NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos joins us now. So, Danny, let's lay out both sides of this. What case is President Trump making for not counting undocumented immigrants, and why are 22 states and 15 cities challenging it?
The challengers, including New York, their argument is pretty straightforward. They say, look at the law. The law essentially says, look at the state. All the people that are in it, you count them. And that's their argument. The Trump team, on the other hand, has a different argument. They say, well, the language of the statute gives discretion to the president to decide how the count is going to be conducted. And that discretion means that he can ask for numbers like the whole number of people in that state, but also a second number, including the folks who are there illegally. And one of the, maybe the stronger arguments they have would be that, look, the rules are, we don't count people who are here on vacation from, say, Denmark. So we shouldn't count people who are here not on vacation, but here illegally. But again, on the other hand, the strongest thing that the states, including New York, have in their favor is that the statute seems to say, take the whole number of persons, report it to Congress.
So, Danny, if the Supreme Court does side with President Trump, what happens there?
If the Supreme Court sides with Trump, they might do on a couple grounds. Number one being standing, which is an issue that always rears its head before the Supreme Court, whether or not the challengers ever had the right to be in court or an injury to be in court in the first place. But secondly, if they do rule in favor of Trump, then they are allowed to report that number to Congress. So it'll be very interesting to see how the Supreme Court reads the language of this statute and the constitutional history.
And Danny, the Census Bureau has indicated it may not be able to deliver all the data by the end of this year. What happens if they miss this deadline? And then could President-elect Biden change the count back to include all residents when he takes office in January?
It's an interesting point. The Trump argument is that Trump, the president, has the discretion to do all these things. Well, if a new executive takes the reins, then that executive has the same discretion to undo them, arguably. So that might be a tick in the new president's favor, ironically, if the Trump team wins in their executive discretion argument here.
All right, Danny, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And sorry, I had Shaq's button here, and I can't, for the sound that we missed, and I'm still figuring
Danny,
this out. So
next time,
sorry,
gotta be
Shaq.
on it. Maybe you can fix our prompter, too, next time it goes down. Turning now to Capitol Hill and the relief so many families are waiting for. About 14 million people are set to lose their unemployment benefits after Christmas, while Americans wait for Congress to reach a deal on a coronavirus bill. NBC News correspondent Leanne Caldwell joins us now. Leanne, going to ask you some of the same questions we've probably been asking you for a long time here, since we just still don't have new information. But there are also two other unemployment programs set to end soon, the eviction moratorium and student loan deferral. Will all of these motivate both sides to make a deal? Do you think we could finally see something?
It's finally getting really real, Savannah. The fact that 14 million people could lose their unemployment insurance. You mentioned the other two programs that are set to end at the end of the month. And the fact is that Speaker Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell still have not picked up the phone yet to call each other.
Не, я как бы, ну да, ладно, что надо? Ничего не надо. Я говорю, бомжары что ли? Да, бомжары. Нет, зачем это, если уезжать будешь? Нет, ну вот это есть оно, в случае переезда. Понял. Только если переезда. Да, вот это и есть на самом деле. Ну, типа, вот это. Они что, думают, что серьезно, что ли, что я там буду, как бы, ну вот я понял. Ну вот я понял. Жить и учиться. Ну нет, это что такое вообще? Такая интересная вещь. Слово туда сказать. Да наоборот. нет, ну нет. Разглядяй просто. Нет, это не видно. Что такое? Да это что такое, а? Нет, наоборот, он не говорил, мудрак, что ли, ты мудрак. Нет, наоборот, блин. Мне наоборот, не это ну, это единственное самое, что здесь. Даже что
So just before Thanksgiving, there could be a little sign of compromise because a member of Senate Democratic leadership, Debbie Stabenow, said on CNBC that Democrats should perhaps accept a smaller package to get them into the Biden administration and then do something big. Well, that is a position that Democrats have not been having or maintaining, and so perhaps that is a little bit of opening where Democrats might come to the table to compromise, Savannah.
Now, the Republicans are set to lose one of their Senate seats this week, with Arizona Democrat Mark Kelly taking Senator Martha McSally's spot. How will their smaller majority impact negotiations?
Well, Republicans will no longer have 53 seats, they'll have 52. So that means their margin of error is a lot smaller. They have a little bit less influence in Congress than they did before, and every vote matters, Savannah, especially when you have some of these moderates like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski and even Mitt Romney on some issues who are willing to buck their party. And 3 senators is enough to give Democrats, 3 Republicans is enough to give Democrats a win. We saw that, and so this is something that could impact negotiations on COVID relief, on...
Это все не важно, понимаешь? Ты такой, ой, мы были старые. Всем, понимаешь, факт есть факт, понимаешь? То есть, да. Человек, да, извините, человек понимает это все не работает, понимаешь, надо вот, да, типа того, реалиста мужик такой, что там говорил, да. Все нормально, короче. Извините, прошу прощения, там, это все не работает, понимаешь, это. Ну так и так, ну и что дальше, допустим, да. Как бы, да, ты чего, да, мы понимаем, да, да, есть реальность, потому что, понимаешь? А в этой реальности отдельно ее выглядит. Что ты несешь такое? Нет, по себе я не так думаю, понимаешь? Заначки, еще заначки. Ну, дебил. Сейчас надо это тоже, надо быть щепетильными, да, или надо более щепетильными. Где-то 8 тысяч должно получиться, если они не дополнительные 4. Можете сюда прямо деньги класть на эту карту, я тоже буду рад. Donation, пожертвования. Размеялась просто. Подожди, а где я? Ну ничего, нет. Подожди. Какую еще карту выпустить? Где здесь вход? Какой подбор карты? Где войти тут здесь? Личный кабинет где? Что за тупость, блин? Ага, это написать надо. МТС банк. Аналин слово должно там присутствовать. Он смеялся в этот. Подожди, я что-то не где я не пишу. Так, 45-50. Да, кстати говоря. Это не важно. Да. Не загонять просто. Меня это не волнует, да. У меня есть план, да. Точно, кстати. Ну, да. Нет. Пошли. Нет, поняла она себя.